I'm with Chris Byrne, who has a really inspiring channel called at Poetry Changes Lives 315, and he's been giving me confidence and showing me tips and tricks about how to do YouTube. And my channel, Psychology of Travel, is about content that will inspire people to overcome their fear and have the confidence to travel the world and live abroad for extended periods and get jobs everywhere. And I know how difficult it is to overcome those fears because I went through all that. So I'm really open to, I want to encourage people about all this. And but also it's about I want to be traveling around a bit and meeting people who've done journeys or got travel experiences. And Chris has got one of the most interesting travel experiences that I've ever heard about. So Chris, do you want to just tell us something about, well, first of all, just a few words about your channel, actually, because we should just say something, you should say something about Poetry Changes Lives. Why do you do it?
Poetry Changes Lives I did because I wanted to do something different anyway, and I was kind of inspired by meditation books that I'd read, a sort of daily meditation, and a lot of them are quite religious or focused on one thing, like sort of addiction recovery, and I wanted to do a more general daily book that people could just dip into and get a thought for the day out of. So my Poetry Changes Lives is a combination of what happened on this day in history, a poem related to it, and a thought for the day. So, if one day might be the Battle of Waterloo happened on this day, then there'd be a poem, maybe Byron's famous poem about the eve of Waterloo, and then a thought for the day about the evils of war, maybe something like that. Anyway, that's how my poetry career started.
And what inspires me most, though, is how you must have gone through some struggles of confidence, because most of us and a lot of young people don't ever get to have anything on YouTube because their inner critic stops them. And one of the favourite things you hear is, "Oh, I'm far too old to do any of this stuff." That's all the young people your age generally give up before they even start. How did you get over that hump?
Well, I think age helped me. When I was a youth, I was absolutely terrified of putting myself in the spotlight in any way. I was socially very, very awkward, and for a long time I just couldn't face public speaking or anything like that. The only way I could do it is if I had a huge amount of alcohol or something like that beforehand, which wasn't helpful. But as I grew older, I began to see actually the value in sort of scaring the pants off myself now and again, and doing things that I had never done before. And I realized that fear is in some ways a sort of choice, I suppose. That and if you do things you've never done before, they quite soon become familiar. And public speaking is one thing that now I find really quite easy and quite look forward to, which is a total 100% turnaround from many years ago, when I would have gladly run a mile rather than open my mouth in public. So, if I have a message at all, it is face the fear and do it, and suddenly it becomes doable. And that has happened not just for public speaking, but so many other things. From learning to ride a bicycle to all kinds of just trying to think of other things that writing. I mean, I never thought I would be able to write anything, but now I've written several books which gives you satisfaction and confidence, even though they may not be bestsellers. So there's an awful lot to be if you don't try, you'll never know. And it's such a shame that people go through life without realizing their potential and the talents they have.
Yeah. So let's go to what they say in Hollywood, the origin story. So what were you doing in Hong Kong in 1940?
I was being born, basically. My father was in the British Army stationed in Hong Kong when war broke out in 1939, and I was born in October 1940. And the following year, the Japanese overran Hong Kong, as they did a large part of the Far East. And of course, it was a terrible time. I don't have actual memories of nearly all of it. I don't have any memory of Hong Kong, except I know my father was killed in 1941, and my mother and me and two of my sisters escaped Hong Kong just before the Japanese arrived in a plane, and got as far as Burma. My older sister was safely at boarding school in England at the time. And so my poor mother, with these three small children, me being a year old at the time, and my two sisters just slightly older, she was faced with this awful task of fleeing from the Japanese, like quite a lot of other people, I may say, at the time.
Hundreds of thousands, no?
Yeah, absolutely. And we found ourselves in Burma, where there were quite a lot, I believe, of other British and foreign nationals with a similar dilemma, having been uprooted from, the Philippines and the places like Java and Indonesia, and they were all trying to get away from the Japanese, who were advancing from the Far East, sort of gradually westwards towards India.
And in your book, you said that the people with money would get could fly or get the boat.
Yes, yes.
But they left behind the mass of people.
Yes, I think my mother was really from Rangoon. She was faced with getting us to India, and the only way to do that was to walk north.
There's jungles and mountains and an incredibly difficult landscape.
Yes, it was sort of several 100-mile journey that was really a sort of, not exactly a death march, but a really challenging prospect for so many people. And that's what she undertook with us. And I don't know how long it took. I don't remember it. I do remember sort of vaguely, I have a memory of sort of hiding in a ditch and people saying, be quiet, because we were being pursued by Japanese troops. And eventually we did, I am told, make it to northern India, to, can't remember the name of the place now, but
Bengal.
Well, it was sort of Bengal, yeah, and managed to get into India, which was safety. And my mother took us across India down to the south to Uttarakhand, which is down right in the far south tip of India. And
a hell of a long way, isn't it?
A long way. So a very long journey, starting in Hong Kong. It took many months to get to India, I think at the end of 1941. And we were staying with a nice family there, I think, and my mother, very sadly, had a brain hemorrhage and died there. So suddenly, again, I was now at the age of sort of almost 2 years old. Um, we and my sisters and I were sort of left stranded in India, and someone very kindly arranged for us to be put on a boat back to England in 1942. And I do remember being on that boat in a cabin with a big cabin with a lot of bunk beds and a lot of very scared looking people. And, you know, we were in a wartime convoy going round the Cape of Good Hope back to England, which took a long time. And there were, you know, I can remember being in this cabin with hearing the guns booming outside, and which was really my first memory where I have sort of images of it. And eventually we landed up in England, and I have a very strong memory of sitting in my grandfather's house in Camberley, having just arrived, sort of sitting in, he had a big house, sitting in the hall on a sort of bench with everybody sort of, or my mother's sister sort of greeting us and everything. And it seemed like the end of a very long journey, though I think I was quite traumatized, as my sisters were too, because they were slightly older and they had very vivid memories of marching through Burma, sort of in terrible conditions, which I don't really have much of. But that was the story, really, which, as I say, a lot of other people actually had to go through as well. Quite a lot of there was
and then later on in life, you became a therapist. You obviously did a lot of training in that. And
yes,
were you able
yes.
to work out the impact of all that on your
yes
self?
I think I had a sort of mild form of PTSD. I can remember as a child, you know, finding it very difficult to sleep sometimes, and just that sort of awful dread and the feeling that there was something really bad on the other side of the hill, sort of that, the unknown, just the sort of fear of the unknown all the time. And I was sort of I did have therapy in my later on, about the age of 30 something. I did see a counsellor and go through it all in great detail, and it really helped, and I wrote it down and that sort of thing, and it's really helpful. I can speak about it now very easily, but for a long time I just couldn't visit that, my childhood, my very early childhood at all. So, you know, there's a great value in therapy, I think, and one of the ways that you can deal with your emotional upheavals, whatever they may be, I think, is to write about them and talk about them. And sometimes writing is easier than talking.
Certainly for me, I find it much easier to write how I think about things or feel about things in writing, because sometimes my thoughts verbally get a bit messed up, and also I think writing, or what the Americans call journaling, is a really useful travel skill. Like when you're traveling independently, trying to process all the experiences. I guess blogging too, but then you've got the issue of, this is public, so a bit more difficult. But keeping a journal, a diary, is really. I used to do it every day when I was traveling in Tibet and Asia. Was quite a big book, like a page a day It would take me about half an hour to write a whole page up, but it was really valuable stuff. And on the back of that, I wrote my first travel book, 9 months in Tibet.
Well, I think, if anyone who writes a journal is storing up their experiences in a wonderful way that you can look back on and, get insights from, apart from anything else. And any sort of writing, I think, is so sort of satisfying. Even if you think it's rubbish at the time, you can learn things from it and maybe use bits of it later in so many ways.
I remember there was this quote I came across from a French author called Anatole France. I presume he was French. I don't know who he was.
Anatole France, yeah.
Anatole France. He said, you can't write a good book until you've written several bad ones.
Right. That's nice. There's another great quote by a Frenchman, Flaubert, who wrote Madame Bovary, of course. He said, be disciplined and orderly in your life. And he used to write a diary as well. So that you may be violent and explosive in your writing.
Was he the one who wrote Naked?
No, that was another Frenchman.
You should tell that story too.
That was Victor Hugo. It's not actually proved to be true, but it's certainly there are a lot of stories about Victor Hugo, who his family, he had a wife and hangers-on, children and things, and they all depended on his writing for their income. So he was quite fond of going off to the pub or the cafe, and they would hide his clothes, not allow him to have his clothes in the morning until he had written, I think, up until lunchtime each day. So he was sort of, if not naked, certainly in his pajamas when he was writing most of his great works. But I mean, nobody's ever actually proved that.
Yeah.
But it's a nice story.
Anyway, you asked this morning how long is this video going to be, and I said, well, usually they're 2 or 3 minutes, maybe 5, maybe 10 at the very, very maximum, and we're on 17 minutes because it was also really interesting. But we really need to knock it on the head here, because I'm not sure I'm going to get it onto YouTube. I'm not sure I can upload that much from my phone. But anyway, thank you so much, Chris. That's really fascinating to get your story.
Well, thanks, Rupert. I mean, gosh, you inspire me with your travelling. My goodness me, I'm a child compared to your. If I had your psychology of travelling, I would be a much more intrepid traveller than I am these days. But never mind, that's another story.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you again.
My